joining us today. We're very excited to have you joining us for the conversation today. Germany is an important partner to Africa, and there's a history and a special relationship for the last 20, 30 years between Germany and Africa, and specifically also Rwanda. Let's start our conversation a little bit about what we just talked a little bit about the current pandemic with COVID and everything happening. I want to touch this with you. How's the German government supporting Africa regarding with COVID?
Thank you very much. And of course, it's a pleasure to be with you. And I'm humbled by the number of people in the audience. So I'll try to be short in my answers so the audience has more time to flood us with questions. Yannick, thank you very much. I think your first question goes right to the heart. What are we doing together? And it goes on to where we are at this point of time after 2 years almost of the pandemic. And I think right from the start, I think we have to set out one or two things. One is that, and this has been repeated enough times, but you cannot repeat it more often. We are in this together. Everybody, globally, there's nobody who can be saved from this pandemic. And our leaders, Chancellor Merkel, Paul Kagame, Ramaphosa, Macron, have said this right from the start. So already in April 2020, it was clear that we need a global response. And it is also clear that none of us will be safe without everybody being safe. But what does that mean in practice? That means in practice that all of us must have access to tests, to the vaccines, to the medical drugs, and so on. To put this into action, that has been part of my work, but also of many others around the globe in the last 2 years. We have made a major contribution, I think, to the global setup. We have been working through international organizations. It's clear that the international organizations are best placed to deliver globally those goods we all need. We have taken our responsibility in being a big donor. What Germany is, I think, number 2 in the bilateral donors for the COVAX, for example, of which also Rwanda has been benefiting in the last weeks.
Yes.
So, and now we also have been working on this by financing the research on a number of these drugs. Yeah? The German government gave 370 million to AstraZeneca for speeding up the research and the development of the drugs. So that was our responsibility in that way. So, and if this is global, of course, it's not only specific to Africa, but we want to continue. We see that the pandemic will be around for some time. We are probably not beyond the peak yet, and it will come back in different forms. So we have to be alert. But I think what we have exercised now is working together, and very, very effectively, I think. So that will help us in the future.
I see. So you just touched 2 things I want to come back on, the partnership between Africa and Germany, but also globalization and multilateralism. We have been seeing a little bit, maybe in Europe, the rising of anti-international organization, multilateralism, and all these elements. I want to ask you, how important is, looking COVID and how we are working together, how important is multilateralism today?
Okay, I think for us, certainly for Germany, but I think for all the European countries, multilateralism is the key element of our foreign relations. I think it's true for most African countries, certainly. COVID-19 is a good demonstration of what we can achieve together. And if you do it on your own, you don't achieve anything. That has been clear right from the start in Europe, when governments tried to block the advance of the pandemic by closing the borders, at the same time cutting out the trade and the movement of people, though the damage was enormous. Yeah. So that's why we also on the vaccine side, we have decided to do this right from the start together. So it is clear that I think to all of us, and we here in Europe, we're suffering from the same phenomena or similar phenomena and everybody else on global warming, the changes of the climate, but also on security issues, you know, that we cannot solve those issues alone, especially small countries. I mean, we are on the global scale with 85 million people. We are still a small country now.
Yeah.
So it is clear that these attempts to solve cannot be done by working individually between countries, but we need global institutions and we need global rules for organizing this planet. So securing everybody by making it possible to exchange goods, for people to move, for financial flows to flow, and we need rules and procedures and ways to settle our differences, because I mean, it's just hypothetical that you can have a world without differences or conflicts, but you need ways to do that without violence. And so multilateralism for us is exactly this, yeah. And it protects also the weaker from the stronger. So the stronger has to make sure that is also abiding to the. And you have seen in the last 4 years what happens if a strong country starts to work only in its own interest. And you can see now with the new administration in Washington how keen they are to repair that, because they have seen that even they have been suffering from that policy. Maybe I leave it at that.
I want to touch about the lessons we could learn from COVID, but I will come back to that a little bit. You touched a little bit about cooperation and partnership, and I want to ask this question: what does cooperation or partnership between Africa and Germany looks like, you know, today, before COVID, you know, or after COVID? What that partnership look like?
Okay, maybe I have to tell you that I have been in Africa for almost 50 years now, 40 something.
Good. So you're doing
on and off, and also as a development worker.
Yeah.
And for a number of years, I worked in Kenya, and by that time it was the relation, so to say, we were working on. I mean, always good-willed and good-natured, of course, but it was asymmetric. You know, we were the ones who were giving, and the African side was taking, and we were deciding how to do things at the end. It was asymmetric relations. And this has changed. This also has changed in the way also my government, our people look at the cooperation with Africa. Yeah? It wants to be a cooperation on the same level, because it's we all know, as I've said before, for multilateralism can only work if everybody's interests and everybody's voice is taken as equal. So that, I think, is the key change, and it comes out in the different initiatives the German government has started with Africa. We had a G20 initiative, the Marshall Plan for Africa, with Africa. But also other issues. We work very closely with the African Union. And our principle there is that we work on the agenda Africa is setting. So meaning, let's say in a practical sense, if you look at the African Free Trade Zone, that means this is a project, this is an agenda that has been developed by our African partners, by the African Union Commission and African states. So now we are seeing what can we do to support that. But we don't want to superimpose ourselves on this. Of course, we have an interest that Africa establishes its free trade zone. It will benefit us as well on the long run. It is very clear. But what is important also here is that it's an African agenda, that it has been defined in Africa, and that we are playing a role of supporting, but not of defining this. So that is the basic principle. You can run through also through the whole range of initiatives we have been making, also in the security area, where we are happy to support African processes. I take one also a concrete one from last year, the coup in Mali. In the old days, European powers would have started to intervene and try to arrange things so to somehow keep their interests, so to say, represented. This time, it was very clear this was ECOWAS, the African Union, and the UN with the office in Dakar, who was doing the political management of this crisis. So I think it's a change, a remarkable change of the day before.
So you touched a little bit of the Marshall Plan and the compact. I want to also talk about the compact with Africa. Please, could you talk a little bit? I had a great conversation with Ambassador Thomas, the ambassador of Germany here in Rwanda, and we talked a little bit about Marshall and compact with Africa. But I want to hear a little bit about what's the updates of these two important initiatives in the relationship between Germany and Africa, and how's that going?
Yeah, the compact with Africa also is a typical element of this policy I've described. It is basically, I mean, you could say this, what I've told before about the Marshall Plan with Africa is the compact is flowing out of this. And the idea is that we support governments and countries who want to go for certain type of economic reforms, meaning there is an agenda that has been defined with our partner, and we help them very specifically in those key reforms that can be different forms. It's modular, and it's different for different countries because there's different interests and needs. So it can be very concrete things like the energy sector, the financial sector, the governance questions of the economy. So it must be the interest of the country. That is a clear realization of that. And the other side of this is also that we create instruments that can be used by African partners to basically invest. So there is a financial instrument that's called Africa Grow that is based on a sort of a fund which is open for others. So partner countries can join, and it's designed to help small companies to create, to get investment capital and to create, so to say, investment and of course employment, because that's one point which I think we come also during this discussion, we'll come to that certainly, is the question of employment and investment in Africa. Yeah. And we see that there is huge potential and we want to help realize it. But for that, we need companies to grow. Yeah. And to become partners for this sort of investment with or cooperation with German or European or other firms.
That's also touched a question I had about private sector, but looking the trend in terms of high officials from the German government visiting Africa is very positive, very different than many countries in Europe, and you know, Germany's EU Council presidency in 2020 and the G20 2018. Africa was an important partner and kind of focused to the discussion on the table that time. Why Africa is an important partner to Germany?
Why? There's a number of reasons. Economic reasons certainly as well. Africa is for us a growing market, a growing investment place as well for German companies. So by 2050, Africa will be the continent, the only continent in the world where population still will be growing according to present forecasts, and where the population will be very young, will be active economically. And of course, we hope that we can contribute to educate and train these people to become economically active. So that is one thing. The other interest is what I described. Africa must be a partner in crime in multilateralism. The Europeans, 40 countries, Africa, 54, you know, we together, we are half of the world community. And it's our neighboring it's our neighboring continent. So wherever you are, when your neighbor is not doing well, you're not doing well as well.
Yes.
You know? So we have an intrinsic interest to help Africa become prosperous, become stable, end the conflicts in Africa, end the refugee crisis we have here, and also become democratic. Because what we also want is that our neighbor believes in the same things we believe in, that he has the same ideas about what is right and wrong, and about how conflicts should be settled, not by the gun and who is stronger, but by rules and institutions and working through institutions. So that's why we also, put so much emphasis on democracy and political participation on the continent, on the freedom of discussion, the freedom of media. So it's in our well-defined own interest, but I think it's also in the interest of the African people. And then it's security as well. Of course, there's a lot of security challenges which are global. One of them is, I would call the global jihad, which we are fighting now since many years, which is also endangering our neighbor. We have seen in the last few weeks or months how in Mozambique, in the north of Mozambique, this affiliate of the Islamic State has started to grow. We have Boko Haram in Nigeria, very brutally attacking the civilian population. We have IS western the Great Sahara in Niger, Mali, and Burkina. So I think that's something we have defined also as joint interest to work together.
So want to touch on the other part you should mention a little bit, the private sector. So for German companies looking this discussion now, what can you tell them? What are opportunities for German private sector in Africa? Which sectors where?
Okay. Of course, I'm not an economic operator, but what I can see in the discussions we have with German companies, but also with African partners, is, there's a number of trends which are interesting for our economy. The German economy is based very heavily on small and medium-sized companies. You have a few big ones, like Siemens, VW, and so on. But by and large, the most contribution to the economy is through small and medium-sized companies. So what is interesting for them is a number of trends which we see. One is the urbanization. That Africa becomes an urban place. It is very quick. With urbanization come a lot of needs for development. You need services. You need the health sector. You need education. You need the mobility. So there's a lot of companies working on these issues, and of course also on the way you organize an urban space. I think we're quite good on that. The other one is what I would call the value-added chain, which is underdeveloped in many countries in Africa, but which is clear we need to improve to get more value added into African economies. I think that is very clear. Though what the Germans can offer here is solutions for, if you would say, for helping to get this value added, to create it by the machines we have, by the way we organize processes, but also the science side. There's a lot of cooperation between German universities, African universities. Whenever I go to a place in Germany, I look, what are you doing in Africa? And then recently I was in a medium-sized university in southern Germany, and I was really taken aback by the amount of cooperation there, but of which I don't know anything, of course. Because I don't need to know, but it just shows that there is an interest there. And then there is food production. I think Germany is also maybe less known, a big producer and refiner of food.
Yes.
And though that we have also technology there we can offer. And then there is a huge area of energy and infrastructure and renewables especially. I mean, many experts would say energy in Africa will work like the telecommunications in Africa, not on a centralized base, but on a decentralized base, meaning that you have a lot of small units which produce energy for local communities. And then you build a net. I think there's probably some truth in that. And we have a lot of technology for that as well to offer. So I think that's what we have. There might be many other things. Germany is a big economy, but it's more than just cars, I can say.
I was gonna say Volkswagen is amazing. Anyway,
digitalization is another area.
Yeah, and we'll have a great German butcher here, but different story.
Okay.
Just come back to a little bit COVID because I'm still running out of time. I want to ask the last 3 questions, and then we'll jump into with a few questions with the audience. The one is coming back to COVID. What kind of lesson can we learn from COVID?
Well, looking back into the last 20 years or so, 30 years ago, if you look at this through the eyes of today, you can see that crises like the COVID crisis, which is at the end a pandemic crisis, have been popping up every 5, 6, 7 years. But we were maybe lucky once in a while because they didn't reach that sort of universal scale. But they had the potential, and now the world is different, and there's much more interconnection between countries and people. So such a disease is spreading much faster. Yeah. So the question is here: are we resilient enough? I come back to the multilateralism side and to the global issue. You can build as a state, you can build a very strong system, but it doesn't help you. You need to interconnect with others. And if your neighbor is not resilient and doesn't make preparation, then at the end you catch it as well. So, what will play with us certainly is that we'll have to learn how to get faster in these things, how to organize institutions and processes on how to work together in such a case. I think what we can see that now in this COVAX initiative or the Advanced Tool Accelerator against COVID, I very much doubt that they will be wound down after the COVID pandemic is over. Yeah. There will be, so to say, a residual institutional setup to do that in the future. Okay, of course, working on the health systems, work on early warning. What have we learned out of the tsunami in, when was it, in 2001 or 2000, no, it was later, 2002, I think. Yeah. The early warning system that float in the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. And of course, again, the need for cooperation. Yeah, that I think is very clear. But there's a lot of lessons to be learned also. Let's say Germany has to learn a lot of lessons internally. But it's good to have peers there and benchmarks. And what others did to learn from that, because that was also clear that what we thought was a very strong health system very quickly comes to the brink of chaos if you don't have certain issues. Like we have a problem that we don't have enough people carers. So we have the machines, we have the beds, we have everything, but there's nobody to turn the patient around.
Yeah.
And so very simple thing, but it will stick, and I think we'll have to analyze the issue.
There was supposed to be a European Union African Summit for ministers, if I'm not wrong, 2020. Last year, it was cancelled for COVID. Any updates on that? Is it still happening? Is that coming?
Yes, that was a big disappointment of our EU presidency, I have to say.
Yeah.
And, you know, we were all geared up for this big moment. Our heads of state and government would have met,